Andrei was happy to find a job as a security guard in an old building in the city center. The work seemed calm, and the salary was quite decent. The building was massive, with a high facade in the style of the late 19th century, and its corridors, shrouded in semi-darkness, seemed to be steeped in history. Andrei liked such places, and the first days of service passed without incident. However, one moment caused him a vague concern. When the boss showed him around the building, explaining his duties, he dwelt in surprising detail on one point. "Don't go up to the top floor, no matter what happens," he said sternly, stopping in front of the elevator, as if he wanted to make sure Andrei understood everything, just in case. "Wow," and the guy asked, puzzled by such a strange prohibition. The boss only frowned. "Just don't go up, and don't ask questions. This building is special. We keep order in other parts, but you can't go there. When Andrei tried to ask other employees what this meant, they either fell silent or quickly changed the subject. It seemed like an ordinary building, but when he started talking about the top floor, the shadows in people's eyes grew deeper. Andrei followed instructions for the first week. His shifts were silent patrolling floors, checking doors, sometimes having a snack on the first floor. But every time he passed the stairs leading up, he felt a strange attraction. The spiral staircase going deep into the darkness looked as if it was waiting for him. On the fourth floor, the corridor was always a little colder, and the air was heavier. At night, when he was alone, he began to notice strange sounds, creaks, as if someone was slowly stepping on old boards. Sometimes he heard something heavy sliding somewhere above, as if furniture was being moved across the floor. And every time he raised his head, the sound died down. The most frightening thing of all was one night when he heard the elevator move by itself. The cabin stopped at the top floor, and then a quiet, drawn-out ringing sound pierced the silence, a sound like someone touching a metal door. That night, it all started with a quiet, barely audible knocking that came from somewhere above. Andrei was sitting in the security room on the first floor, clutching a mug of cold tea. The clock showed 3 in the morning, the dead time when the whole world seemed to freeze. The knocking was getting louder. It was uneven, like the steps of a person moving around the room. Andrei tried not to pay attention, but at some point there was a crash that made him jump, as if something heavy fell right above him, and then the sound slowly died away. He mechanically picked up the flashlight, his heart pounding. It's just rats, or old pipes. There is no top floor, he tried to convince himself, but his legs themselves led him to the stairs. He knew he shouldn't do this, but the fear of the unknown gave way to an obsessive curiosity. As he climbed higher, he felt the air getting heavier, as if someone invisible was watching his every step. When he reached the 4th floor, everything went quiet. But as soon as he took another step up, the stairs began to vibrate slightly, as if someone was moving along them somewhere above. He turned toward the sound and felt an urgent jerk back from the stairs. When he looked up at the 2nd floor, he noticed an apprehension on the floors. Andrei froze. The light from the lantern caught only the dusty steps and metal railings, but nothing else. It seemed as if the sound of footsteps was coming from somewhere out of nowhere. However, his curiosity overcame his fear, and he took the last steps, finding himself in front of the door leading to the forbidden floor. The door looked strange, massive, with black paint peeling off at the edges. The handle was covered with a green coating, as if no one had touched it for decades. But it seemed to Andrei that the door was slightly open, and a barely perceptible strip of light was visible through the crack. He slowly pushed the door, and it opened with a dull creak. A long corridor opened up in front of him, illuminated by a dim, almost ghostly light. There was a deathly silence all around, but after a few seconds he heard footsteps again, this time much closer. "Hey! Who's there?" he shouted, trying to control the trembling in his voice. No one answered him. But at the end of the corridor, he noticed movement. Something slipped around the corner. He moved forward, feeling the cold grip his body with every step. The corridor led him into a spacious room covered in dust. Old papers and half-rotten boxes lay on the floor, and strange photographs hung on the walls, black and white, with faces that seemed to be looking straight at him. Andrew approached one of the pictures and felt his blood run cold. The photo showed him standing on the same stairs, a flashlight in his hand. Then he heard the door behind him close with a deafening bang. Andrei turned around sharply, but the corridor was now empty. Then, from behind, from the depths of the room, someone's quiet, even whisper was heard. Andrei stood in the middle of the room, feeling cold sweat running down his back. The whispers grew louder, as if someone was speaking right behind him. He turned around abruptly, but the room was empty. The flashlight darted along the walls, picking out old furniture, dusty boxes, and shabby wallpaper. However, his gaze was drawn to something strange. In the far corner stood a massive door covered in cracks, behind which a weak light barely made its way. The whispers seemed to be pulling him there, insistently calling. Andrei, as if hypnotized, approached and, pushing the door, found himself in a strange room. The entire space was filled with mirrors, standing in disarray. Their ancient frames, covered in faded gilding, were of different sizes and shapes, but all the mirrors reflected the same thing: his figure, standing in the middle of the room. For a moment, Andrew thought that these were ordinary mirrors, but then he noticed that the reflections in them were not moving like him. His head in one of the mirrors tilted slightly, although he himself stood motionless. In another, his reflection turned its head, looking straight at him with a cold smile that was not on his face. "What, he squeezed out, retreating to the door. But the door behind him disappeared, leaving only a mirror in which his reflection froze, staring at him. The mirrors around him came to life. His doubles moved more and more freely, going beyond what he did. One of them raised his hand and pointed directly at Andrei. The other took a step forward, as if about to step out of the glass. "And Artoy!" A voice came from all the mirrors at once, deep, vibrating with an echo throughout the room. "Now you are one of us." He tried to scream, rushed to the nearest mirror, trying to break it, but his hand passed through the surface as if through water. At that very moment, a cold force pulled him inside. He felt something squeezing his chest, pulling him deeper into the glass surface. When he opened his eyes, he saw only his own reflection, but it was no longer him. Now he was standing in the mirror, and the room behind him looked gloomy, alien. His own body stood in front of the mirror from the outside, smiling in a way he had never been able to. "And now you guard this place," His reflection whispered from the outside and turned, leaving. No! Andries screamed, but the sound dissolved in the glass void. All the mirrors around him began to slowly go out, leaving him alone with the endless darkness. The next day, a new god appeared in the building. They explained all the rules to him, including the strict prohibition to go up to the top floor. When he asked what was there, the boss only answered gloomily, "It doesn't matter. The main thing is not to break the rules."